Confucius on Leadership, The Unseen Power of Benevolence, Ren. Hook and intro in a world obsessed with power, force, and immediate results. What if the most profound form of leadership lay not in command, but in compassion? What if the greatest strength came from the gentlest of virtues? Today, we embark on a journey back to ancient China, to the spring and autumn period, a time of chaos and conflict, yet also a crucible of some of humanity's most enduring wisdom. We will explore the revolutionary philosophy of Confucius, a man who over 2 millennia ago proposed a radical idea that true leadership is achieved not through coercion but through the cultivation of benevolence, a virtue he called Ren. Imagine a leader whose mere presence inspires trust, whose actions cultivate loyalty, and whose character guides an entire populace towards harmony, not through fear but through respect. This is the vision of leadership that Confucius laid out in the Analects, a collection of his teachings that continue to resonate with profound relevance today. In an era where leaders often prioritize power and self-interest, Confucius reminds us that the true measure of a leader lies in their moral compass, their commitment to the welfare of their people, and their ability to lead without force. The Analects, a foundational text of East Asian thought, isn't just a dusty old book of philosophy. It is a practical guide for living a virtuous life and, crucially, for governing with ethical wisdom. Confucius believed that the stability of a state, the harmony of its society, and the well-being of its people all hinged on one thing: the moral character of its leaders. He argued that if a leader embodies Ren, acting with humaneness and empathy, their influence would be as natural and undeniable as the North Star guiding ships across the vast ocean. But how exactly does one lead without force? What does benevolence truly mean in the cut-and-thrust world of governance? And is this ancient ideal still applicable in our complex, globalized 21st century? These are the questions we will delve into today. We will uncover how Confucius challenged the prevailing norms of his time, advocating for a leadership style built on self-cultivation, moral example, and the profound power of empathy. This video is not just about understanding ancient philosophy, it is about reflecting on our own leadership challenges, whether in our communities, workplaces, or even our families. It is about discovering a timeless wisdom that offers an alternative path to influence and authority, one that prioritizes genuine connection and lasting transformation over superficial compliance. Stay with us as we unpack the profound insights of Confucius and explore how the power of benevolence can truly change the world, one leader and one virtuous act at a time. Context and background: to truly appreciate Confucius's philosophy of leading without force, we must first understand the tumultuous world in which he lived. Confucius, or Confuzi, lived from 551 to 479 BCE, a period known as the Spring and Autumn period in Chinese history. This era was characterized by profound political fragmentation, constant warfare between rival states, and widespread social upheaval. The centralized authority of the Zhou dynasty, which had once united much of China, was in rapid decline, giving way to powerful feudal lords who frequently engaged in brutal conflicts, often driven by ambition and self-interest. Imagine a society where stability was a distant memory, where trust was scarce, and where the common people suffered immensely under the whims of warring aristocrats. This was the landscape that shaped Confucius's worldview. He witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of governance based solely on military might, coercive laws, and ruthless power plays. He saw that such methods might yield short-term victories, but they ultimately bred resentment, disloyalty, and perpetual cycles of violence. Confucius was not merely an ivory tower philosopher. He was a scholar and an official who spent much of his life traveling across various states, seeking a ruler who would adopt his political and ethical philosophy. He yearned to restore the moral and social order he believed had existed in earlier, more harmonious times, particularly during the early Zhou dynasty. Despite his profound wisdom, he often found his counsel unheeded by power-hungry rulers who preferred immediate gains over long-term ethical governance. His teachings, later compiled by his disciples into the Analects, were a direct response to this chaos. The Analects is not a systematic treatise, but rather a collection of aphorisms, anecdotes, and dialogues between Confucius and his students or various rulers. It is less about abstract metaphysics and more about practical ethics, human relationships, and the principles of good governance, all grounded in the belief that a well-ordered society begins with well-ordered individuals. At the heart of Confucius's philosophy lies the concept of virtue, particularly Ren Chinese letter, which is often translated as benevolence, humaneness, or goodness. This is not merely a passive quality but an active, empathetic concern for the well-being of others. It is the ideal state of human character, and for a leader it is the ultimate tool for governance. Confucius believed that a leader's moral cultivation, the Chinese letter, was far more effective than any law or army in guiding the people and fostering social harmony. Another crucial concept is Lai Chinese letter, which refers to rights, propriety, rituals, and social norms. Lai provides the external framework for ethical conduct, channeling and expressing Ren in socially appropriate ways. It establishes order and decorum in interactions, from grand state ceremonies to everyday greetings. While Ren is the inner spirit, Lai is the outward expression that helps maintain social cohesion and reinforce moral behavior. The ideal leader in Confucian thought is the Junzi Chinese letter, often translated as the gentleman or noble person. The Junzi is not defined by birth or wealth, but by moral character, self-cultivation, and a commitment to ethical principles. They are a moral exemplar whose actions serve as a blueprint for society. The Junzi continuously engages in self-reflection and learning, Zhu Chinese letter, understanding that personal improvement is the foundation of effective leadership. Confucius also introduced the idea of rectification of names. Zhengeming Chinese letter, which means ensuring that titles and roles correspond to reality and duty. If a ruler is called a ruler, they must truly act as a ruler, fulfilling the ethical responsibilities inherent in that role. This principle highlights the importance of integrity and authenticity in leadership, where actions must align with titles, preventing hypocrisy and confusion that can lead to societal breakdown. In essence, Confucius offered a radical departure from the power-centric politics of his time. He proposed a holistic approach to governance, one where personal virtue, ethical conduct, social harmony, and the well-being of the people were inextricably linked. His vision was a society where individuals willingly followed the way, Dao Chinese letter, not out of fear, but out of an internalized sense of shame for wrongdoing and an inspiration to emulate the virtuous example of their leaders. Core narrative and analysis. At the very heart of Confucius's philosophy on leadership lies the concept of Ren benevolence. But what does it truly mean for a leader to be benevolent? It's far more than simple kindness. It's an active, empathetic concern for the well-being of others, a deep-seated ethical disposition that guides every action and decision. For Confucius, Ren is the essence of being human and therefore the foundation of all ethical conduct, especially for those in positions of power. Consider the profound statement from Analects 4.1. The master said, "Is Ren far off? If we really want Ren, it is close at hand." This isn't a passive observation, it's an empowering declaration. It means Ren isn't some unattainable ideal reserved for saints or sages. It's a choice, a commitment, a practice that is always within our reach. A leader who genuinely seeks Ren will find it in every interaction, every policy, every opportunity to serve their people. This active benevolence leads directly to Confucius's most transformative idea, leading by example rather than by force. In Analects 2.1, he famously stated, "To govern a country by means of moral virtue is like being the North Star. It stays in its place, and the host of stars turn towards it." Imagine the North Star, unwavering and constant. It doesn't command other stars to revolve around it. Its sheer presence, its stability, naturally draws them into orbit. Similarly, a leader who embodies Ren doesn't need to bark orders or issue threats. Their moral gravitas, their consistent virtue, naturally attracts respect, loyalty, and willing cooperation from the populace. This is further reinforced in the metaphor of wind and grass. Analects 12.19 illustrates this beautifully. The virtue of those in high stations is like the wind, and the virtue of the common people is like the grass. The grass will surely bend when the wind blows across it. The wind doesn't forcefully yank the grass into submission, it merely blows and the grass naturally follows its movement. This powerful analogy highlights how a leader's moral influence is not coercive, but an inherent force that subtly yet effectively shapes the behavior and attitudes of the people. Confucius drew a stark contrast between this virtue-based leadership and governance through laws and punishments. In Analects 2.3 he declared, "If you lead the people with laws and regulate them by punishments, they will indeed try to avoid the punishment but not feel any shame. If you lead them with virtue and regulate them by propriety, they will feel shame and will also correct themselves." This is a fundamental critique of legalism and authoritarianism. When people are governed by fear of punishment, their obedience is superficial. They will find ways to circumvent the rules, and crucially, they will never internalize the moral reason behind those rules. They will feel no shame for wrongdoing, only regret at being caught. However, if they are led by a virtuous leader, one who sets a moral example and guides them through proper rights, something profound happens. They develop a sense of shame. This isn't humiliation, but a deep internal recognition of having done wrong, prompting self-correction. This internal moral compass, cultivated by the leader's example, leads to genuine, lasting ethical behavior. This is the difference between superficial compliance and true transformation. The foundation of this benevolent leadership is relentless self-cultivation, or Zhu Chinese letter. A leader cannot inspire virtue if they do not embody it themselves. This involves constant learning, reflection, and self-correction. Analects 1.1 states, "To learn and then have occasion to practice what you have learned, is this not a joy?" This isn't just about accumulating knowledge, but about integrating that knowledge into one's character and actions. Zhengzi, a disciple of Confucius, famously practiced daily introspection, examining himself on 3 points. Whether in transacting business for others, I may have been wanting in diligence. Whether in intercourse with friends, I may have been wanting in sincerity. Whether I may have not learned and transmitted all I knew. Another critical aspect of self-cultivation is the rectification of names, zhengming. Chinese letter. This concept, discussed in Analects 12.11, means ensuring that every individual, especially a leader, lives up to the ethical responsibilities inherent in their title. When Duke Jing of Kai asked Confucius about governance, he replied, "Let the prince be a prince, and the minister be a minister, let the father be a father, and the son be a son." This seemingly simple statement carries immense weight. It implies that true social order requires authenticity. A ruler is a ruler because they fulfill the duties of rulership with integrity, not just because they hold a position. If roles are not lived up to, society descends into chaos, as the Duke himself implicitly understood when he followed up. If indeed the ruler be not ruler, the minister not minister, the father not father, and the son not son, even if there were grain, how would I get to eat it? Beyond Ren and self-cultivation, Confucius also highlighted other virtues that support benevolent leadership. Yi Chinese letter, or righteousness, dictates the appropriate action in specific contexts. While Ren is the general spirit of humaneness, Yi guides how that spirit should manifest in concrete situations, ensuring justice and moral correctness. A benevolent leader must also be righteous, making fair and just decisions even when difficult. The concept of leading without force also finds resonance, though with different nuances, in other Eastern philosophies. Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, for instance, advocates for Wu-Wei Chinese letter, often translated as non-action or effortless action. While Confucianism emphasizes active moral cultivation and engagement in social roles, Taoism suggests that leaders should allow natural processes to unfold, intervening only when necessary and with minimal imposition. The Tao teaching advises, govern a great state as you would cook a small fish. Tao Teaching, Chapter 60, meaning with delicate care without overhandling or excessive interference. This implies a subtle, indirect approach where the Tao or the Wei guides events, similar to how a benevolent Confucian leader's influence feels natural and unforced. A powerful counterpoint to this Confucian ideal of benevolent leadership can be found in Western literature. Consider Shakespeare's Macbeth. It is a chilling exploration of ambition, tyranny, and the destructive consequences of power seized through force and maintained through violence. Macbeth, driven by insatiable desire and fear, sacrifices all virtue for the crown. His reign is characterized by paranoia, bloodshed, and ultimately utter ruin for himself and his kingdom. He leads solely through coercion, and the result is chaos, resentment, and a complete breakdown of trust. The tragedy of Macbeth implicitly validates Confucius's warning: leadership without virtue is destined for self-destruction. The Analects, therefore, presents a comprehensive vision of leadership where the true power lies not in the sword or the law book, but in the cultivated character of the leader. It is a power that attracts, inspires, and transforms, creating a lasting legacy of harmony and well-being. Deep insight and reflection. Confucius's philosophy of leading without force, through the power of benevolence, offers profound implications for our modern world, resonating across personal, social, and political spheres. In an era where trust in institutions and leaders is often eroding, the Confucian emphasis on integrity, empathy, and ethical example provides a powerful blueprint for rebuilding confidence and fostering genuine connection. Consider the concept of ethical leadership in the 21st century. In boardrooms and political chambers, leaders are increasingly judged not just by their financial gains or legislative successes, but by their moral compass. Companies like Patagonia, known for their environmental stewardship and fair labor practices, embody a form of benevolent leadership that prioritizes long-term well-being over short-term profits. Their founders lead by example, cultivating a culture of integrity and purpose that attracts loyal customers and dedicated employees, demonstrating that profit and virtue are not mutually exclusive. This resonates deeply with Confucius's emphasis on a leader's character being the foundation of their success. The idea of the Chinese letter as a form of moral charisma or influence is a precursor to modern notions of soft power and moral diplomacy. Nations today often seek to influence others not just through military or economic might, but through the attractiveness of their culture, values, and ethical conduct. Think of countries that are globally respected for their humanitarian aid efforts, their commitment to human rights, or their cultural exports. This form of influence, where nations earn respect and cooperation through their moral standing, directly echoes Confucius's belief that a leader's virtue naturally attracts others, making forceful imposition unnecessary. Furthermore, the Analects' focus on cultivating character for governance highlights the enduring importance of continuous personal development for those in positions of power. We've seen countless examples of leaders whose personal failings have undermined their public office. Confucius would argue that effective governance begins with mastering oneself. Modern leadership training programs that emphasize emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and ethical decision-making are, in a way, echoes of Confucian self-cultivation, Shen. Leaders like Nelson Mandela, who spent decades in prison cultivating inner strength and a profound sense of justice, emerged to lead a nation through reconciliation, embodying the transformative power of a cultivated character. However, the Confucian ideal is not without its points of contention and nuanced discussions. Critics might argue that this model of leadership is overly idealistic versus realistic. In a world often driven by ruthless power politics and the inherent imperfections of human nature, can personal virtue truly be sufficient to navigate complex challenges? Is it practical to expect rulers to achieve such a high level of moral perfection? The Analects itself suggests a pragmatic idealism where striving for virtue is inherently beneficial even if perfection is elusive. It offers a long-term vision, recognizing that true change is gradual. Another point of discussion is the universality of Ren. While benevolence is a compelling virtue, its specific manifestations and the societal structures it supports might be culturally specific. Can a concept rooted in ancient East Asian hierarchical structures be directly applied across diverse global contexts, especially in more egalitarian societies? Proponents would argue that the underlying principles of empathy, integrity, and respect are universal, even if their expressions vary. Finally, there's the challenge of balancing Ren and pragmatism. How should a benevolent leader handle situations that require difficult decisions, enforce laws, or even in extreme cases resort to force to protect the state or its people? Confucius didn't dismiss the need for order, but he insisted that true Ren would guide practical action, ensuring that even necessary tough decisions were made with fairness and a concern for the overall well-being. It is about prioritizing long-term harmony over short-term expediency, and always seeking the most humane path available. Let's now consider some questions for your own reflection. In your own life or community, where do you see examples of leadership driven by benevolence rather than force? What makes those leaders effective? How might applying the principle of leading by example change the dynamics in your workplace or family? Do you believe that virtue alone is sufficient for effective governance? Or do laws and punishments play an indispensable role? What is the ideal balance? Confucius emphasized continuous self-cultivation. What practices could you integrate into your daily life to cultivate your own Ren and enhance your influence? How can we, as individuals, encourage and support benevolent leadership in our public spheres, even when it seems rare? Are there limits to leading without force? When might a benevolent leader need to employ more assertive or even coercive measures? And how would that align with Confucian principles? Outro. As we conclude our journey through the wisdom of Confucius, the core message remains clear. The most profound and lasting form of leadership is not born from coercion, but from the unwavering power of benevolence. Through the cultivation of Ren, through leading by moral example, and through a relentless commitment to self-improvement, leaders can inspire genuine loyalty, foster deep social harmony, and create a legacy that transcends fleeting power. Confucius showed us that true strength lies in humility, wisdom, and a compassionate heart, guiding others like the North Star, not through command, but through the sheer force of its steadfast virtue. If this exploration of ancient wisdom has sparked your curiosity, there are many avenues for further thought and discovery. You might want to delve deeper into the philosophical contrasts between Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching and the concept of Wu-Wei non-action. Explore how Taoism offers a complementary yet distinct vision of effortless governance and natural influence. Mencius and the Kingly Way Wang Dao. Discover how this later Confucian philosopher expanded on Confucius's ideas, emphasizing the innate goodness of human nature and the moral imperative for rulers to ensure the people's welfare. The contemporary relevance of ethical leadership. Examine modern case studies of leaders in business, politics, and social movements who exemplify Confucian principles in today's complex world. The tragic flaws of tyrannical rule as seen in literature. Revisit works like Shakespeare's Macbeth or even explore modern psychological thrillers that delve into the destructive nature of unchecked ambition and coercive power, serving as powerful foils to benevolent leadership. Thank you for joining us on this intellectual journey. May you find inspiration in the enduring wisdom of Confucius, and may you recognize the quiet, the transformative power of benevolence in your own life and in the world around you. Until next time, keep seeking wisdom, keep cultivating virtue, and keep leading with compassion.